Hi there, and thanks for joining us this week on the MyBank, MyMoneycast. Unfortunately, we're still working on season 2. However, we're still going to have someone in the chat, and special bonus, we're going to be playing a mega mix of our first 5 episodes for you today. So sit back, relax, do put some questions in the chat if you have them. I'll still be around. But rather than having a live episode, we're going to show you the best of our first 5 episodes. Here you go. This is our first ever MyMoneycast broadcast. So essentially what we're going to be doing with these broadcasts is giving you a chance to catch up on the news you might have missed, to get some information on one big topic every week, and we're going to have guest speakers in who are going to talk about the topic of the day. Today we're covering COVID-19 and how it might mess with your money. First of all, let's start with benefits and working. The big news here is that a lot of people who are not working at the moment have been furloughed. If you're not sure what furloughing means, it means that you're not working. The government at the moment is offering to pay 80% of the wages of the staff that are furloughed to the company that employs them. Let's talk about housing. If you're waiting for social housing, we know that you might be frustrated. It's coming. Now, what happens if you can't pay your rent? You do need to let your landlord know if you have any kind of financial problems. It has been made illegal to evict people initially for 3 months when the lockdown first started. Next up, holidays. If you have a holiday booked and you have insurance and it's a package holiday, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be protected and you're safe. CMA is absolutely on it and is looking out for your rights when it comes to holiday cancellations. Next up, with events, similarly to the kind of holiday line, if something's cancelled, you should be given a refund or a rebook. If in doubt, make sure you shout and get it to grips with what exactly your rights are. Lastly, let's talk about debt and borrowing, because a lot of people will be thinking about how can I get through this tricky time. If you're struggling now, please do the math about whether you can afford to pay for things after you come out of this situation. All the people you owe money to, 9 times out of 10 they're willing to help. And today on Real Talk, I am joined by Amy Eubank, who looks after well-being for us at MyBnk's.
It's very much about supporting people and putting as much emphasis on physical health. I think stress is obviously one that I'm sure all of us in this situation can relate to. Whether you're the CEO, whether you're someone who's been furloughed, there's a sense of loss around what we thought normal was, and suddenly it's changed, and it's okay for that to be frightening. A lot of people at the beginning of lockdown were saying, I'm going to do projects. I've got this list of to-do things that I'm going to work through. And fantastic. If you've worked through that list or in the process of working through that list, that's wonderful. If you haven't, or if you've started and you've had to stop, don't worry about it. Take a step away from the social media if you feel it's not helping you, or alternatively, taking a step away from the news is really important. If you are feeling anxious, if you are feeling stressed, writing some things down, taking a pen and paper and just putting it out there. I think it's very much about doing what feels right for you and trying to connect with those feelings and be authentic.
We're covering debt and borrowing today. We have a program called MoneyWorks. MoneyWorks is a program we run for 16 to 25-year-olds, but the MoneyWorks program is where we're going to take a lot of the stuff today. Let's talk about why people borrow in the first place. We know that we have to pay it back, and we know it's going to be a trouble. Why bother paying anything? There are some good reasons to borrow. If you want to buy a house, if you want to start a business, you might need to borrow money from the bank. Where you borrow money and you make money off it, we call a good debt. Bad debts are debts where you're going to end up paying more money than you borrowed in the first place borrowing. If you are short of cash right now, if you are out of work, if you're trying to pay the bills, borrowing now might be a way to get through it. Just make sure you're planning for the future and not borrowing recklessly. It's really important you understand the number APR, because the higher the APR, the more money you're going to pay back. You should be budgeting your borrowing, thinking about how you're going to pay it back after. Now, one of the other things that will affect your APR is your credit score. A credit score is a measure of how worthy you are to be borrowed to. A credit score is a way for me to prove to you that I can be trusted. Let's show you some of the things that you can do to increase your credit score. Register to vote. Close any accounts you have that you don't use, especially if they're credit accounts. Try not to move house too often if you can. Try to keep your income regular. So the less you mess around with credit, the more it will be there to help you when you. How do I decide who I pay first? Priority debts are very, very specific. They are debts that will end up in you either going to court, going to prison, or being evicted from your home, or being cut off from essential services. The golden rule with paying off debts actually is do it as fast as you can. The quicker you can pay off a debt, the less you'll pay back, especially if there's interest involved. And on this week's Real Talk, I'm joined by Josh Rigby-Farrell, who's a Regional Education Officer for us here at MyBank.
I've gotten quite used to getting into debt, but thankfully, as I've gotten older, I've become more mature, more responsible, and that has allowed me to work my way slowly out of debt. But council tax was quite a difficult one to deal with. It chased you everywhere. You couldn't get away from it. It's quite expensive to pay. And as well as that, it can get you into trouble with the government, which can result in you being sent to prison. It wasn't as bad for me, but I did spend a day in a cell because of non-payments of.
You spent a day in the cells because you didn't pay your council tax?
Yes, yeah, I did, yeah.
I think one of the things that happens with debt and stress is that people don't talk about it, so they never really get any help. So they kind of get stuck in their own head, and that's it, and it gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. Because if you're sitting there thinking, this is me, I don't know what to do, I'm so stressed, don't sit in silence, speak to someone. We break down some ways for you to make money that you might not have thought of for the big topic, and we're joined by a money-making YouTuber for Real Talk. We're going to talk about traditional ways to make money so that when the virus and the lockdown is lifted, we can work out how to make some cash. But we're also going to talk about ways that you might not have thought of to make some money now while we're in lockdown. We've had the rise of what we call the gig economy, which is the rise of those apps and websites where you can do odd jobs here and there. And today for Real Talk, I'm joined by... Oh, there we go. Ahima Alfia, who is a Moneyhouse graduate, YouTuber, and mum. How are you doing?
And everyone's telling me, like, start YouTube. And I didn't know where to start. And one day I just did it. And that was about like 2 years ago. So basically, when it comes to money, you get paid based on ads. So when you post a YouTube video, like, ads will show. If people interact, you'll make like $1 per click. I don't know, like something like that. Or 60p per click. And then you also make your money from sponsorship. Okay, so I record on my phone. So obviously I have a monthly bill. So I don't really have a tech savvy camera. I have a ring light that I got from Amazon for £80. So my lighting isn't, but I think it's about making the best out of what you have. So obviously I record on my phone and then I edit on my phone as well with a free app called iMovie. If you're looking for fast money, it's not the greatest, but once you develop your content, the money will start flowing in. Another thing that I do is like going out. So I'll go out to a party or a club for an event organizer and I'll vlog it and then I'll post it on my platform. So they'll give me like a free table, free drinks, maybe pay me like £100 for the promotion. So then I'm having a fun night out and I'm also getting paid. If you really want to do it, you like talking, you want to reach out to people, try it out. So when I did the Money House, I realized that I'm actually grown up and this is going to be useful because in school, they don't teach you about tax. They don't teach you about money handling and all of that. You don't learn that. You learn like Pythagoras theorem.
Number one, if you do decide to do some self-employed work or start YouTube and start making some money that isn't from an employed source, make sure you tell HMRC, the tax man needs to know, and you need to do your own taxes. Also, remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Do your research, do your homework, make sure you're not getting scammed by someone. The scam is any situation where someone is trying to take money from you that they don't deserve, essentially. This is the real impact of how scams can actually hurt someone. It's not cool, it's just theft. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to stay safe from these kind of scams. We're going to talk about how they get your information. Because a lot of scams used to be a person going up to someone and having a conversation. Now we've moved online and we've used tech to kind of get to people. So,
coronavirus is not only a serious health issue, but criminals are taking advantage of the situation. They send fake text messages, also known as smishing. Your smartphone isn't that smart. So, if you receive an unexpected text or email, don't click on any links or attachments until you can double check trusted sources that it's safe. And never respond to any message that asks for your personal or financial details, even if the message appears genuine.
And once someone's fallen for a scam once, you're on the sucker list, and now they'll send you every scam they've got. This is the little book of big scams. It's produced by the Metropolitan Police. So obviously be careful about anyone offering services at the door. no way to tell whether they're genuine or not. That people are going to exploit the fact that you want information. So you should go to places you trust. Stay with us. Go to places like the government websites and the mix. If you buy something which you think is genuine and it turns out to be fake, you've been scammed. So the big thing with telephone scams is take a breath. We'll talk about how to solve it, but don't do anything rushed. Make sure you take a second to think about whether or not you're being scammed. If you do have someone who's asking you to donate to charity, you can ask for the charity number for the charity they're collecting for, and you can look that up and see if they're a real charity. And if you're still suspicious, call the charity. And make sure you're not just borrowing from Bob down the pub, because the chances are, if he hasn't got a license and he's not an actual company, there might be some ramifications you might not foresee. So, how do I avoid getting scammed in the first place? If you're shopping online, trying to use sites that you trust. If you have smartphones, laptops, any form of tech around the house, make sure it's at the latest update, because when you don't update your software, that's when the hackers find the little gaps to get through. What do I do if I've been scammed? If I think I've been the victim of a scam, who do I speak to? It's really important that you do those three things. Protect yourself from further risk by contacting the company that you've seen has been breached, by checking if you can get your money back with your bank and by calling 101 and talking to the police, and then report the scam with Action Fraud so they know it's happening and they can offer some support as well. And this week on Real Talk, I am joined by Oscar Asiwando, who's going to be joining us, talking a little bit about cybersecurity, but also about his experience with us at MyBnk's.
People are relying a lot more on the internet, not only for their own safety, but just to live their lives. And it doesn't take very much effort or very much knowledge for a hacker to be a hacker. So long as you've clicked on that link, they suddenly have all the information from you. I've tried it and I've been able to get things like people's battery lives and where they live, exactly where they've been at what time.
Battery lives? You got the battery life of their device?
Hackers don't really need to put a lot of effort in order to get your passwords.
This week, we are talking all things savings and investment. To make money, how to save money, how to get help if you need it. Let's talk about making that money work for you now. You've made this money, you've put it away somewhere safe. What are you going to do with it? Do I save it at home or do I save it in a bank? There was a story actually of an old lady who had a load of money saved up over many, many years, and she'd been stuffing it in her mattress to keep it safe. The problem is she didn't tell anyone that that's where the money was. So when this lady unfortunately passed away and her family were clearing out the house, of course they threw out the old mattress. Don't be like the mattress lady. Don't make sure your money is accessible and you're not putting yourself at risk as well.
Compound interest is the interest an investor earns on his original investment, plus all the interest earned on the interest that has accumulated over time. The effect of compounding becomes especially powerful over longer time periods as the amount of earned interest becomes larger and larger.
First of all, we've got your standard regular instant access savings account from your normal high street bank. If you've got a savings account, this is probably what it is. Then you've got ISAs, individual savings accounts, and we'll talk about those in more detail. And then you've got things like bonds and premium bonds, which are an interesting one. The big thing you want to check for is the interest rate. ISAs tend to have better interest. And a cash ISA is a savings account where the interest you make isn't taxed. So it's all yours. Now, the other option is a bond or a premium bond. Saving bonds, essentially, it's like you borrowing the bank some money and then paying you some interest. We talked about APR when we talked about borrowing, and we said we want to keep our APR as low as possible because that's what we're paying out. In this case, we want our AER to be as high as possible. Now, what do you mean by an investment? Like, what's the actual term mean? Well, the dictionary definition of it is the action or process of investing money for profit. So you're going to put money in to get more money out. The one thing about an investment is that it's not always guaranteed. It's not guaranteed. And you are taking a level of risk. Now, when people think about investments, they think about something called a risk to reward ratio. Explain this one.
The risk to reward ratio tells you how much you stand to profit for every unit of currency you risk.
I know that my mum invested in McDonald's toys. I have a whole box of them. Mum, sell them. eBay. I'm sure we can make some money on them now. Do it. We've got some actual experts in to help us out here. First of all, I'd like to introduce David Henry, who is the investment manager for Quilter Cheviot. Also with me today, I have Gabriela Strug. Have I said that right?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. And she is a financial planner for Quilter PCA.
So I think one of the fantastic things about the last 20 years, 30 years, certainly investment, is the whole thing has become a lot more accessible. You know, do not be intimidated. Try and get your head around the simple concepts, because the rewards are there for the long term.
Your first go-to ports of calls would be ISAs and pensions. Make sure you're using those allowances, but starting saving is absolutely key. The earlier the better, all thanks to compound interest.
That the longer term that you have or you leave the money for, the better chance of a positive, good return. The second way to defend against risk is diversification. And put simply, that's not having all of your eggs in one basket.
Until next week, stay safe, take care, bye-bye. Thanks for joining us this week for our recap of our first half of Season 1. Join us next week right here for the recap of the second half, episodes 6 through 10 of the MyMoneycast by MyBank Season 1. And of course, stay with us on our social medias to find out when we're going live with Season 2. Thanks again. See you next week.